Hi, welcome to my studio. Today I'm going to show you how one of the ways that you can use the 4-Artist markers by Pebeo. A lot of people think that you can only use them on card making or writing on any surface, which they're absolutely fabulous for. But today I'm actually going to show you how to do a landscape with these. So they're great for on-location painting as well, if you don't want to take a full art kit out with you. So what I'm going to be using today is the 2mm tip in the black and the white, the 4mm tip, in those ones I'll be using the white, the yellow, the brown and the dark green. The 8mm tip, I'll be using the yellow, the white, the black, the green, that's the dark green, and the blue, which I assume also is the dark blue. Also I'll be using the bronze in a 15mm tip. Okay, I'll also be using a selection of the Pebeo brushes and pop art canvas. Also, what will be needed is the medium, completely odourless. Let's get to the painting. Now, before you start painting, it is important to prepare your work surface. So what I've got here is the pop art canvas pad, and inside there you have 20 primed sheets. So as you can see, it's slightly darker there, and we've got a primed surface here ready to paint on. So I've taken one of those, used standard masking tape and taped up all the way around the outside. The next thing to do is make sure that all of your pens markers are primed. Now here is a new marker, so if I just twist that and remove the cellophane. Once you've got that off, as you can see, there's a beautiful chisel nib on this one here. This is the 8mm dark blue. Now to prime this, you'll hear there's a ball inside, so give that a good shake to prime that paint and get it moving inside your marker. Once that's done, you've got to feed the paint out through onto the tip in order to start painting with it. So all I'm going to do here is literally pump the marker onto the tape around the edge of the painting. Just like that. And as you can see, the paint's starting to come down into the tip. Once that paint has come down, there we go, the marker is ready to use. Now before we actually paint, I'm going to need a basic drawing. So here, to start with, I'm just going to draw a small building, in this case a boathouse, and the roof up there. Now the drawing doesn't have to be exact, it's going to change slightly as we paint. So if you go slightly wrong, don't worry about it. There, that'll do. Now you can draw the windows on if you want to, but it doesn't matter because we are going to put those on with paint, and the paint will cover all of this anyway. So some background hills there, coming in there and there, and a distant horizon line, or rather water line, water edge just there. Then I'm going to come in for some land down here. I want a path coming in just about there. Now with the path, make sure it gets wider as it comes forward. That'll give you a horizontal recession and make the path sit down more. I'm going to have some trees coming in there and one there. That's it. Do not get too bogged down with the drawing. The emphasis here is on the paint. So going to the paint, your markers are all nicely primed and your tips are all nicely saturated. So once you've made sure that all of your markers are working, it's now time to get the paint on. So for the sky, I'm just going to go straight in with the blue. There. So cover most of the area. There we go. Just nicely with the blue. This is the 8mm tip on the blue. Now I'm not going to stop and go around my hills and making sure that it's all pristine. Just go through your hills. That's perfectly fine. You'll see why a little later on it'll actually help. So we have the blue in place. Now when you store these, make sure you store them flat. Okay, so next we want to bring that to a gradiated sky. So I want the white, again 8mm, and I'm going to go straight in the blue there. Don't worry about getting the blue actually on the marker tip itself, as you can just wipe the tip off with a small piece of kitchen towel and flood the marker to obtain more white. There. Now the sky's a bit streaky, I want that a little bit smoother. As you can see, I've still got white coming out, just pure white. So it's just a matter of wipe the blue off the tip. I'm not going to do that yet because I want to keep that at a nice light blue level. So next we need a flat brush and a tiny touch of the medium, not too much. So just tap off excess, as we don't want too much on there. And I'm just going to blend this sky in, so backwards and forwards strokes, just to blend in any brush marks or marks from the marker pen, and bring that further down into your hills, just like that. Now if the marker's feeling a little bit too stiff and not moving, just add a tiny touch more medium, but never add too much, otherwise you risk pulling the paint off the paper. Okay, so next we want some clouds. So I want some nice clouds going on there. So all I'm going to use is the 4mm tip. And there we go. Now I'm going to flood the marker by pressing the tip down onto the paper here. And I'm literally just going to dab on and flood this marker out onto my sky area where I want clouds. Now you notice I'm bringing those clouds down into the hills as well. And the reason for that is that when I place my hills on top, I want those clouds to sit behind the hills, so they're not just floating above. And there we go, let's bring that round, flood that little marker a little bit more. And the reason I've chosen the smaller tip for this is I have more control over where I want my clouds to go. Just like that. Now, that's looking an absolute mess at the minute, but don't worry, it'll look all right in a minute, she says. So to wipe that tip, just literally wipe it onto some kitchen towel, flood your marker onto, and then we have white again. So to clean in your tips is very easy to do, so don't worry about getting other colour on. Now with these, to make this look more like a sky and more like clouds, just use your finger, and all I'm going to do is swirl small little circles, just like that. Now every cloud is different. Don't worry about making your clouds look exactly the same each time, because that never happens in nature. Every cloud is always different. There we go, small circles. Now I'm not too concerned over this area here because we do have trees that will be covering the cloud area as well. If you want to add more white, just tap in a bit more white. And there we go. There. There. I'm happy with that. Actually, I might just add a little touch more down into where it's coming into the hills here. So I'll just put a bit more white into there. There we go. That's better. Yeah. Just soften that bit there. Now you can play around with these for quite a while. If the sky stops moving and you want to move it, you can add a tiny touch of the medium to your finger or to a brush and just start moving that a little bit more. Now the reason I'm not overly concerned about the white coming down into my hills is because I'm going to be toning the hills back anyway to push them further back in the landscape. So I am going to add more white, which will bring some of that blue down as well. I'm going to add more white to the hill area here, just like that. And now I'm going on with the main colours for my hills. So it's at this stage now I've got to decide where I want my light coming from. And in this instance I want it coming from the right, so I'm going to place my highlights to the right of the hills. Now the yellow in the 8mm marker is a fabulous bright yellow, and as you can see I'm taking it through that white and into my clouds, just like that. There. That's going to give me the highlight. As you can see, it's already mixing with the blue and creating a small green. That's perfectly okay. So next I'm going to use the dark green and fill in the rest of the hills, just like that. There we go, bringing that in. So you can see the hill's already starting to take some shape. It'll take final shape in a moment. So bringing that down, careful around my boathouse. There we go. Not bothered about the roof or anything like that. If you go into your boathouse, it doesn't matter. Just apply more paint once this is dried. There. Now I want to add some depth into those before I tone them back and push them into the background. So I'm going to use black. Now, it sounds a little odd putting black. I'm not going to use very much, just literally a few tiny touches here and there, mostly along the base and to the dark side of the hills and around the building there. Alright, now using that same flat brush that we used on the sky, just clean that off. Not much medium in this, so wipe out excess and literally going to pull that light down into the green. Wiping off your brush regularly because you don't want to take too much of the green away, or the yellow away should I say. There, just like that. Once I've taken the highlight down and into my painting, it's then a matter of taking the shadow up and onto the shadow side of the hills. I don't want to leave any black behind, I just want a darker green, so merge that on the paper. There, rinse off your brush. So it's a matter of taking the light into the dark and the dark into the light. Now if you lose too much of your colour, just add some more. There. There. As you can see, that's just turned into a nice darker green there. I'm going to add more yellow highlight to that one in just a moment. But before that, I'm just going to merge in this side here. And as you can see on this side, I've lost the green. Not a problem, I can add more green in. With these, because they are oil paints, effectively in a marker, it's a matter of just keep painting on and adding colours. So I'm going to add some more green into this hill here, and a lot more green into this one here. I don't want to lose all of that green. So if you add too much of one colour, add plenty of the other. So I'm going to add more yellow into there to bring those highlights really in up the top of those hills. And bring that down there. And take that into there as well. Yeah. And then just merge. So I'm going to do the dark colours first. Clean my brush off and we'll get the highlights in there as well. As you can see, I've already changed the roof boathouse, the roof of the boathouse. But don't worry, we'll bring that back. Yeah, rinse your brush off. Now if these colours are looking a bit too bright and too to the front, you can tone them back with a touch of white. Now in order to do that, I'm going to add my white and I'm going to flood it on my tape. There, so we've got a little bit of flood in there, not too much, just the tiniest amount. I'm going to touch my brush on there, and all I'm going to do is use that to tone back these colours, just like that, just toning them down, there, pushing them further back, there. And don't forget to rinse your brush off when you've got too dark a colour on. We'll take that down there. I will need some more yellow on that one as well. I'm not too concerned about this area here because this is where the trees are, but this area here I need to separate the two hills. Like that. So I'm going to use my finer yellow because I want to get a nice line in there to separate those two hills. There. Flood that a little. Get that highlight in there. There. See how effective that can be, just by separating those two hills just there. I'll add some of that over here and there. there we have two distant hills. Okay, so for the next part now we need some water. Now you should never change the blues of your sky. However, that blue there is a little bit too bright for water by itself, as you can see. But I am going to use it because I don't want to change my blues. But I'm going to tone that down with the other colours. So first of all, let's get a nice straight line at the top there. And we're going to colour in. Now if you notice, I'll bring this over the top of my grass area. So I'm coming over the grass line. That's okay. We're going to lay grasses over the top of the water a little bit later on. So bringing that in there. And there we go. Now you can already see by adding the bright blues there, it's pushed those hills further back, but those hills have pushed the clouds further back as well. That's the aim, what we're aiming for. So next I need other colours on here. So I'm going to put green on. Now I know it sounds odd putting green into water, but it's not going to turn out green water. It's just going to tone it back slightly. So you don't want too much, just enough to tone the water down. Just a few lines here and there. And brown. There we go. So I'm just going to make sure the brown's coming through. There we go. And we're just going to add a few lines here and there of the brown. And then using your flat brush again, making sure there's no other colours in there. There was a little bit. Clean that out. There we go. And we're going to stroke sideways, just like that, to merge those colours. And I'm not going to blend them completely. I want to mix them completely because I want my water to have different depths, but I am just going to stroke it gently enough to tone down that bright blue. There we go, nice straight line at the top there, and tone down that blue. There. Now if you do want a little bit more blue there, for example, a bit more depth here, just add some in, just there. And blend that in. There. So we have a nice water. Now I'm going to come back to that in a minute and get the highlights on there. So what I need to do now is my shed, or boathouse. I keep calling it a shed. So first of all, I want to mix a grey for the roof. Now I'm just going to use the black and just flood a little onto my tape up the top there. There we go. Now be careful where you take your lids off to these. If you take them off over your painting, you're likely to splatter your painting. So take your lids off away, and when you put your lids on, make sure you stay away from your painting to put your lids on. If you do splatter, however, you can just paint straight over the top of it. Not a problem. These are oil markers. So now I'm going to use my 2mm tip on the white, and I'm just going to flood that a little bit to get some white out there, and dip into the black. Now that will give me a grey. So I'm going to reinstate this roof that's been covered by grass. Just like that. As you can see, it's not just a flat grey. I've got highlights and lowlights in there. And there we go. There, one roof. Now to get that back to white, again, just flood your marker, clean your tip. There we go, back to white. Now for the actual main part of the boathouse itself, it is wooden, which is probably why I keep calling it a shed. So we have a light side and a dark side to this. Now I'm going to use my brown. Now first of all, I'm going to do the dark side, so I'm going to dip that into the black that I tapped out earlier onto my tape. Just dipping into that. Test it on your tape first. As you can see, it's mostly black, but some brown coming out there as well. And as you can see, when I do my vertical strokes, keep dipping back into your black. And as you do your vertical strokes, you'll see you will get a wood grain effect. Quite effective, that. Now remember, keep dipping into your black. Don't allow this to return back to the original brown, which will happen very quickly. So I'm just going to reinstate the roof edge there in the darkest colour. So we've got shadow underneath the roof, like that. There. Now as you can see, I've brought my shed or boathouse further back. So you can change its shape at any point. As you can see, the brown's coming through a little bit too much there, so I'm going to keep dipping into my black and create a wooded grained effect there. Now for the light side, the same brown, but this time I'm going to dip into my white that I tapped out earlier. So, and again, same thing, creating your wood grain effect, dipping into your white regularly to prevent it going back to the original brown, and there. So we have our highlight and our dark side. Now you'd probably notice underneath the roof here I've left a gap. I've done that on purpose. The reason being I want to dip back into my black to create the shadow underneath the roof, just there, to make that roof sit down onto my boathouse. Now let's just sharpen up that roof a little. So I'm using my white. A little bit too much white there. There, so we've got some highlights coming down onto that, mixing with the grey underneath. And if you want more grey, just dip into your black. Now as you can see, that's bled slightly, that's fine. It's just because I flooded the marker a little bit too much. Easy enough to fix that. So getting your straight marker, your straight brush, your flat brush, and literally stroke that through. Just like that. There we go. There. Now let that dry for a little bit and we'll go back to the water. So there's a couple of ways that you can do this to get the highlights on the water. You can either use the 2mm tip on the white marker and literally create your impression of water. There you go, reflection on the water from the sunlight, of course. Or you can use your flat brush. I'm just going to clean that, make sure it's nice and clean. Wipe off excess. We don't want too much medium on at this stage. And we're going to soften in this white that we've just put on. Not all of it, but just enough. Just like that. So we're going to soften that in. Now this is just going to add a little bit of lightness to the water, and we're going to bring it back with some more white in just a moment to get the real highlights on the water. There. Now you can dip into your white that you've squeezed out at the top here, and we can reinstate along there. So you can do it directly with the marker or you can do it with a brush. It's entirely your choice, whichever you're most comfortable with. And there we go. We'll create the effect of highlights on the water. There we go. Now we're coming down to this area down here. So most people will put the grasses on first and then be careful to paint the path on afterwards. And what you will find if you do that is that the path will sit on top of the grass. Whatever you want on top, paint it last. As you've seen here with the boathouse, I wanted it in front of those hills. Same with the sky, I wanted those hills in front of the clouds. So whatever you want sitting down, paint it first. So we're going to the path. Now the path, it's going to sound odd, the colours I'm pouring out, just cleaning off my yellow there. I want a little bit of green on there, but not much there, mostly yellow. So as you can see, they return to colour quite quickly. Now I'm going to add this yellow over the entire path area. As you can see, getting wider as we come further down. Don't worry too much about pencil lines, come straight through them. There we go. You won't see any pencil by the time this painting is finished. There. Now earlier on I mentioned that I'd be using the 8mm bronze. Now I know it's going to sound odd using bronze on my path because it is an absolutely beautiful metallic colour. And there we go. Has a beautiful gorgeous metallic sheen to it. However, when I apply it onto the top of an existing colour, the metallic will actually die down. As you can see, the metallic's really coming out there. It's stunning. But on the path, on the top of the yellow, it's not going to turn out completely metallic. It will to start, but it'll change. There, so as you can see, small amounts in the distance and more down in the foreground here. That way we get tonal recession. The path gets lighter as it goes further away. Now the bright yellow, or the yellow by itself, is very bright for a path, and the bronze is very dark for a path, or rather metallic. So I'm going to blend the two together using a tiny amount of medium. There we go. And as you can see, the metallic side is disappearing, and the brightness and garishness of that yellow is also disappearing. If you find it's too bronze, add a bit more yellow. If you find it's too bright, add a bit more bronze. There. So I'll add a bit more yellow into the foreground here. Getting some of the colours of the landscape in there as well. That's why I said don't worry about if there's green still on your mark. A tiny touch more medium on that one. That's better. Now we're going to add some shadows to this path in a minute when we get the grasses on. But for now, we just needed to get this path in. So you notice I'm stroking sideways, and that's because I want my path to sit down in the landscape, and I want my path flat. There. So as you can see, it doesn't look too bronze, it doesn't look too yellow. It's a nice colour for a path. So next I'm going to do the grasses here, just so that you can see how grasses are done. Now this gets a little bit interesting because you've got to flood your markers enough, but not too much. We're going to be flicking, but if you flick too much, you risk flicking onto your painting, so be careful here. So first of all, I'm going to pop the yellow in. Now you notice I bring the yellow onto the grass, the water. That's fine. So I'm going to flood my marker a little bit as I come further down here. There we go, just like that, but not too much. You don't want to risk over flooding. There. Next I want the green. So again, bringing your green in. Now bring this onto and into your path. Just like that. Now enough that you can flick with, but again not too much that you oversaturate your painting. And black. Now we don't need too much of this. Ooh, there we go. See, that's why it's important to open your markers away from your painting. If you open quite forcefully, it can drip. So, because you can, these are designed to spatter with as well. Now they're good to spatter with and absolutely fabulous, but if you don't want that spattering on your painting, make sure you open it away from your painting. So I'm just going to bring the green in, the black in here, there at the edge. Now because the light's coming from this way, obviously I put the highlight here, the dark green here, and the black against the edge of the path, so it's going to cast shadow onto the path. So now I'm going to use Pebeo's fan brush, and all I'm going to do is literally very gently, be careful not to flick too much because you don't want this to flick into. If you flick up too hard, it can splatter up your painting, so be very careful. Then I'm going into the black and flicking up with that as well, just to create some grass shadows. There we go. Now with the remainder of the black that's on there, I'm going to literally take that and drag that across my path to add the shadow to the path and to make that path sit down. See how effective that is? It literally changes the formation of your grass and your path. There. Just like that. Okay, we're nearly there with this one now. So, coming back here now, all we've got left is the trees, the windows and doors, and the foreground grasses here. Now, as you can see, this is a little bit sticky, but mostly touch dry. The sky is dry. And yes, it is oil paint, but it does dry very quickly, which is fabulous when you're painting on location with these oils. So, what I'm going to do now is get the trees in place. So first of all, I need my highlight colour, which is the yellow. And I'm going to place that and dotting it on. Now be careful how much you depress the tip. If you depress the tip too much, you risk flooding. Now if you want a little bit of flooding, that's good. But if not, just tap your tip gently, the paint will still come through. There, so we've got some highlights there for the light side of the one tree, and there for the light side of the other. I'm just literally spattering on, as you can see, a little bit more paint coming out there. There. Now the green. I'm going to use a larger green on this because I'm filling a bigger area. And I'm literally going to tap through some of my yellow, not all of it. and bring that carefully around the outside of your boathouse, just like that, and then tapping on, getting that paint out of the marker, and again here tapping on into your yellows. Don't cover them completely, we need some of those yellows to show some highlights. Bring that down to the roof, carefully around your building, and tapping into place there. Now, black. So again, I don't want too heavy on the black, so I'm going to use my 4mm black. And I'm going to come carefully around the building, there, and tapping on. Not too much, but just enough so that you can change the building slightly there. And now I know the light's coming from this side, but this building is putting a shadow on that tree, so make sure you paint that in there. Yeah, and take that up, flip that marker slightly onto your tree. There we go. Now, using your flat brush again, what I'm going to do is using the one side for the light and the other side for the dark, and I'm going to crush it in, but let's get that bronze out of there first. There we go, using medium. There. So I'm going to tap using the one side to take the dark into the light, or the dark into the medium colour, merging that carefully around the building and bringing that up. Now as we get towards the light area, I'm going to turn that over to use the light into the dark, just like that. There we go. Take that dark up and light down. So take your darks into your lights and your lights into your darks. So flipped over again for the darks, carefully around your building. And again, we want that dark green, not a black. So don't worry if you lose all of, or some or all of the black, because we can reinstate it. Literally, you are creating a shadowed green effectively. And flip over again for the light, take the light into the dark. Then bring that down carefully around your building. There. Now obviously if you've got some that is slightly too light, add a tiny touch more. Just tap it a little bit more. There we go. Now we can add more highlight to that tree if we want to. I'm just going to add a tiny touch more and bring that round here a bit. There, and a bit more there, I think. There. And again, just wipe that off slightly and just tap that in. I don't want to lose it all, but I just want to lose those tap marks. There. That's a little better. There we go. So now we've got your roundedness and your light coming in from your tree. So all that's left now is the windows and door and the foreground grasses down here. So for the windows and door, I'm just going to go back to my 2mm marker on the black. And I'm just going to literally make sure that it's flooding and that sun's coming through. Excellent. And I'm going to create a window here. There. A small one there. And a door there. Let's make that window a little bigger. There we go. Excellent. There. So just for the finishing touches now, we just need the foreground grasses down here. So again, taking your yellow. And it's got green in it already, which is good. I'm going to take that onto the path. No. So I'm just going to actually, for a purer yellow, flood out some from my 4mm, sorry, marker. There we go. So we've got some purer yellows coming out there, because I want some real good highlights in here. Now, this building here is going to be casting a shadow across here, so we don't want too many highlights down there. So let's get those in down there. Now, green. lots of green here, so the whole area filled with green. What we don't want to leave behind is any white canvas. The reason being, if you leave white canvas behind, it'll turn a horrible, unnatural yellow in no time. And of course that will just destroy your landscape. So we fill in the whole of the canvas there, leaving some yellow, and then your black. Now remember what I was saying here, this building's going to cast a shadow, so I'm going to put some black down there and bring some down here and here, like that. Now using your fan brush again, we're going to flick gently, because remember you don't want to flick it up your painting. Flick there and onto the building. Now, as you can see, the highlights and lowlights appear in the black, casting that shadow. Wipe off if there's too much black. I'm just going to literally take out any of the hard lines from the marker pens using the fan brush, flicking. Wipe your brush regularly, just like that. There we go. So pretty much almost done, except you can see little white bits just there. So all I'm going to do is use the corner of the brush and literally fill in that white bit with a tiny touch of the paint, just there. And there we go, one landscape using the 4 artist markers. Now to finish this off, just remove the tape. As you can see, it's left me with a nice border around the outside. And there we have a nice oil painting. Now, if you wanted to, once this is completely bone dry, you can have a different finish. As you can see, there's a nice shine on this painting. Yeah. And as you can see, all of this area here is completely dry. There we go. Now if you wanted a different finish on that, you can by using the varnishes. The varnish you can get. So you've got Brilliant Gloss, Satin Varnish, or Matte Finish. Each one of those varnishes will protect your painting and stop it from moving any further, but also will give it a different finish. I personally love the gloss, but if you're displaying your painting in a very well lit area, you may wish to choose the satin or the matte. I hope you've enjoyed this project. There will be more projects up soon. Visit my website, leanneellisart.com, and I'll be posting the videos on there quite regularly. Thanks for watching.